let's talk about font metrics because the chances are you probably want to change these font metrics to better serve the proportions of your own typeface. By default, Glyphs has a value of the X height and the cap height and all these things just so the information is in there, but you probably want to change them. And so after you have at least the capital H, capital O, lowercase n, and lowercase o, just take a look at the measurements of your fonts and then let's try to adjust these. So for example, in this O here, you can probably see that the X height is way off. It's way higher than what we have for the O. So let's change that. First of all, let's determine what our X height should be. And of course, you can just click on this node right here and then see that, okay, so it's 483 units high, so maybe it should be around that. So you can do that, or you can right click, add guide, and then sort of measure what your X height should be. So this is a guide that will help you in measuring other different parts of a letter. You can use this to align serif heights, any measurements, accent heights, anything that you want. This does not come out when we're actually exporting the font file itself. So here you can see that there's a blue line that's created. You can see that there is a round node right here where you can click on, and that's how you can drag this up and down. And you'll also notice that if you double click this, it'll also change so it's vertical instead of horizontal. So let's put it back right there by double clicking again. And in case you're working on a sloped typeface, just know that if you select the node and then click on the line, you can also drag this so you can see it can be in any angle that you would like. And just like any other part of an outline, you can Command C, Command V, or copy paste it to make other variations of this. And also, let's right click and then see that there is an option to lock guide so you don't accidentally move it, or you can also make a global guide. And I'll just quickly show the global guide. The global guide I just used. So the global guide is emphasized by this red line right here. And you'll see that I can move it around, but even if I go to a different letter, you can still see that that line is still there. Let's change it back to a local guide. So that's a blue one. And then if you go into the big O, you can see that it's no longer there because it's a local guide that only applies to the lowercase o. And all right, so that was a little bit of a tangent. Let's go back into the height itself. So let's say, considering the O has an overshoot, I want my X height to be, let's say 460. And so I'm moving this with my keyboard, and you can see that I am moving it 460 right here. And then, so that's the measurement that I want. So let's go and change the X height. So I'm going to go right here in the upper left corner, show font info, or Command I, and then let's go into the second tab, which is the Masters tab. So if you go into the Masters tab, you can see that there is a bunch of numbers under metrics, and then metrics is what we want to change. So here it says the X height is 500. And let's change it to 460, which we know because I've highlighted the guide right there. And then we see that this has an X plain value of 460. So let's do 460 right here. And I press return, so it's there. And it might seem like nothing changed, but that's because you need to refresh the tab. So I'm just gonna go into a different tab and then come back. And you can see that the X height line actually changed. I'm going to move this guide so you can see. So you can see that the X height line has changed to this value. And so you can do the same thing. For example, if you want to change the descender line and so forth, you can keep going back into the font info menu, and then instead of -200, maybe you want -180 or any other line. So those are what is useful. And just so you know, the ascender can be a little bit taller than the cap height. Sometimes you'll see ascenders of, let's say, the H being higher than the capital H height itself, just so it's easier to read when there's a ascender that comes right after a capital letter. Now, this is all up to you. But I do recommend that you don't go too wild unless there's a reason for doing so. For example, if you have the X height at like 1,000, the chances are if you really design it to be that way, every time you type and press enter, it might overlap. As in right now, if I go and type in like another row of HONO right here, you can see that the leading or the space in between, there is a certain amount of space right there. But for example, let's just imagine for some wild reason, I went and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna make the cap height like what should I put it? 1200, for example. And then you can see that if I go back and come back, you'll see that the cap height is really, really high. But if you, let's say like, if you do it really, really high, you can see that, first of all, it starts to look ridiculous, but then at the same time, if you keep on going, you can see that it will get taller and taller. Now, just know that these metrics in here are just for your own reference, but some programs that you do use like do put in to account these measurements. So try to be as accurate as you can, just so they're not like overly too wild. All right, so those are the basics of the metrics. And then in the next lecture, we'll go into spacing them.